following program contains mature themes on a thematic subject. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. State of the Nation is an opinion-based program. The thoughts and opinions shared within this program are not intended to offend or disregard anyone's perspectives or beliefs. We aim to foster open dialogue, encourage critical thinking, and explore thought-provoking subjects. Recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, this program welcomes all viewpoints and cherishes the right to express them freely. This program also contains the opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening. Tonight, Sri Lanka's story of change that never changes. As we come on the air, the nation is once again talking about rebuilding reserves, ensuring market stability and reforming education. We've gone on this loop for some time, and the funny thing is that we haven't been able to crack the code that brings us the final result we all seek. Why is Sri Lanka managing to circle around the same thing and never find a path that guides us to the promised land? With a massive command in politics, the current government is still taking a snail-pace approach, while people's expectations are at an Usain Bolt speed. For insights, analysis and opinions, tonight I'll speak to the Deputy Minister of Tourism, Professor Ruwan Ranasinghe, Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Professor Indika Karunathilake, Head of International Relations at the University of Colombo, Dr. Pavithra Jayawardena, Consultant Oncologist and Cancer Specialist, Dr. Asanka Gamage, and Economist, Danushka Pathirana. Good evening. I am Mahieash Johnney, and this is the State of the Nation. A very good evening, everyone, and good to see you again. Thank you for making us a part of your evening. Tonight, we'll be talking about our economy, education, health, and global affairs. There's an alarming story to report on our nation's health. But first, a couple of weeks back, CNN Travel did something interesting. They looked at Jayawardena in Anuradhapura and said it is basically a miracle and an architectural marvel. And they had that one line that people keep sharing. Towering above them is the immense bubble-shaped dome of Jayawardena. Now, you know what I felt when I read that. Finally, we're now being introduced to the world through a crisis update. Then CNN goes further. They say when it was completed in the early 4th century, it ranked as the third largest man-made building on Earth, behind only the Great Pyramids of Giza. I mean, CNN got it slightly wrong there. It wasn't the largest, it was actually the tallest. So, yeah, facts for CNN. Well, then they called it a massive megastructure built for eternity, and they said it is still standing about 1,700 years later. Okay, who built it? Well, history credits King Mahieash about around 273 to 301 AD, starting the work, and King Kitsirimeman with completing it. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into a history lesson. I'm telling you why this hit me like, well, not a small slap, but a thundering slap. Because to praise Sri Lanka in a big global way, they had to go back 1,700 years into the past. They had to go back to the time we were building things that outlived us. And now, just think what CNN usually has to report about Sri Lanka in recent times. Don't even crack your brain, I'll give you the headlines. Look at the kind of global headlines setting around the same period last year. Early December of 2025, the region is being battered by storms and floods, and Sri Lanka is in that story with death tolls, missing people, and rescue operations. Late 2025 again, the world is also reading about mass graves and the country's bloody past coming back out of the soil, including reports mentioning a school bag found with remains. So you see the contrast, right? Ancient Sri Lanka, marvel, engineering, how did they do? Golden era vibes. Modern Sri Lanka, floods, graves, and misery. That contrast is not about foreigners or anyone else. That contrast is all about us. So what does that tell you about us as a society? What lesson do we learn from our own history? Because here's the brutal irony. We love the past like it is a comfort blanket, 2,500 years of history, this and that. But we don't love the discipline that created the past. Last week, before we started the show, we mentioned that famous line people attribute to a German philosopher. We learn from history that we do not learn from history. Whether the attribution is just clever wording, but the idea is painfully accurate here. Isn't that our reality today? Tell me honestly, are we not on a misery loop as a nation? Round and round we say life is not good, we blame the people in power, we hear the opposition sweet talking and giving us all the right buzzwords to rile us up, we back them, they get the power, then we say life is not good again. At some point, it stops being a surprise. At some point, it becomes a pattern we are deliberately choosing. Now, I am going to say this carefully. This is not about insulting anyone. This is about ownership. Shouldn't we feel at least a little embarrassed about where we keep landing? Not because we are weak, but because we keep repeating the same mistakes with fresh confidence every time. And then we act shocked when the results are the same. We cannot keep gambling our future and our children's future on hopes and dreams. Hope is not a plan, dreams are not policy, and vibes are not governance. Now think about King Mahieash for a second. Whatever you think about that era, one thing is clear. He didn't just talk, he did. He started something so big that even CNN has to stand there and stare 1,700 years later. So my question to you tonight is simple. When did we become a country that only knows how to talk about doing, and when did we forget how to actually do? Isn't it time we wake up as a nation, not to worship the past, but to rebuild the present so the future has something better to say about us than storms and graves? We'll be right back. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. In our lead story tonight, the race for 8 billion. Now think of our foreign reserves like Sri Lanka's national savings account in dollars. A central bank says that saving account was around $6.8 billion at the end of last year. The governor of the central bank, Dr. Ranasinghe, now says that by the end of this year, we will hit $8 billion of savings. Watch.
End of last year, we have 6.8 billion reserves. We keep building after this. I can tell you is there's sufficient inflows. Even last January and February so far, we have been intervening heavily in the market to build reserves. it will continue. This year we are hoping to build at least 8 billion by end of the year. So that will create much more comfortable buffer.
Now, can that happen? Yes, but only if dollars come in faster than dollars go out. Now, last year, the central bank says it managed to buy about $2 billion from the local market. Now, that kind of buying only happens when exporters, tourists, and remitters bring dollars through banks and formal channels. So, step one is capture. Make it easy, fast, and worthwhile for remittances and tourism money to come through the system. Step two is plug the big leaks. Last year, vehicle imports alone were about $2 billion. So if we open the import tap too fast, the savings account does not grow. Step three is the boring but deadly one. If fuel and electricity losses force more dollar spending, reserves bleed out quietly while everyone is busy arguing on television. And then there is one more catch people skip. That $6.8 billion headline, $6.8 billion headline, includes a swap facility, including with China. Useful, yes, but it is not the same as cash you can use instantly in an emergency. So when we say $8 billion target, the real question should be $8 billion that actually usable right now? Because when the next shock hits, the only reserve that matters are the ones you can spend right now. Let's get some insights. Join me now is Economist Danushka Pathirana. Thank you very much, Danushka, for taking the time to speak to me. Now, given Sri Lanka's recent reserve levels and expected external payments this year, is a rise to $8 billion achievable without new borrowing or payments deferrals?
Mahieash, thank you very much for having me. First of all, I think what we need to understand is even the current level of reserves are not exclusive of borrowings. Now, I think in one of your own programs, Nandalal Weerasinghe, the current governor of the central bank, said that excluding the Chinese swap facility, the rest of the reserves over around 4 billion USD does not contain any foreign borrowings. But this is not true. If we specifically look into the fact that about 800 million in US dollars came into the reserves in December, and in December our trade deficit deteriorated compared to November figures, and our current account surplus was also very low compared to November in December. And so this means to say that also the reserves that were increased had to come from foreign financing around $800 million, because the foreign purchasing, or rather the foreign exchange purchasing done by the central bank during December was around 250 million, which was although a bit more than November, which was around 200 million. That does not account for the increase in the reserves level by over $800 million. So we know for a fact that in December FDIs did not amount to that much, and also we didn't have any multilateral source of borrowings, and neither did we have any foreign inflows into the government securities market, also the stock market. So that leaves only one possibility for us to presume that these increases in reserves came in the form of hot money that for central bank in fact borrowed from private financial markets like foreign banks or maybe even local entities who are holding dollars. So now I also contacted the central bank regarding this matter. So the balance of payments department in fact confirms these are borrowings, but the exact details are not right now public information. So we need to be mindful of the fact that this increase in reserves is like a smoke screen, basically covering up the deteriorating trade balance, and our production structure is not improving to the desired levels.
Danushka, in your opinion, what is the single biggest policy choice that would make an $8 billion reserve target fail, even if remittances and tourism stay strong?
Yeah, so what we need to keep in mind is that the current, even in the current level of reserves, we need to look into the quality of the reserves. So if we resort to these type of borrowings I just mentioned, the government might be able to reach this target despite the fact that they are having to pay close to $4 billion in debt repayments. So we are facing difficulties also in the external sector, because the global political and the economic situation is not entirely favorable. So we may face certain headwinds. So government needs to be more proactive in rationalizing the imports, because the government has been allowing all sorts of non-essential luxury consumer goods, which have basically eaten into the foreign exchange inflow, which mostly have been coming in the form of remittances. Now remittances have shot up about 25%. So this is hard-earned money by our workers who are toiling abroad. So most of that money is now flowing back out of the economy through debt repayments and these non-essential imports, and it's not contributing into expanding the production structure. So therefore government needs to have, on one hand, rationalizing the imports of the country, as well as a more industrially driven investment planning, so that the savings of the economy is on one hand maximized and its usage is rationalized. So therefore the accumulation of reserves can take place in a more sustainable manner, and also in a way that absorbs surplus labor, and also in a way the jobs that are created are also qualitatively higher and high paying.
Absolutely. Danushka, now overall health of the economy, what do you think? Do you think that the government can push towards a positive growth about 4 to 5% rather, along with the recovery efforts and also other factors coming into play?
Yes, at the moment I think what is more critical, rather than the growth rate per se, although growth rate is important, at the moment I think we need to focus more on the fact about the distribution of the already existing income. A very recent report put forward by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations came in the end of November, that is before the Ditwa catastrophe occurred. Even before that, our food insecurity of the entire population was as high as 30%, and among the plantation sector this is close to 55%, which is almost double that of the national average. So there is a intense problem in when it comes to access of food and essential items. So therefore the policymakers need to be mindful of the redistribution aspect, and of also the price of essentials. Despite the fact that our inflation rates are seemingly low, if you actually go and check the prices of essentials have been moving up quite steadily. So this is in fact making a huge issue in securing the essentials that the ordinary citizens require. So therefore government on one hand needs to keep their focus on bringing the essential prices down, and thereby improving the distribution problem that we are facing in the economy, as well as I mentioned earlier, needs to have a more industrially driven economic planning so as to improve the job quality and the sustainability of the growth process.
Well, hopefully for the country's sake, we hope that the central bank can actually push towards bringing those reserves up, because that is actually a security blanket for this nation when there are economic shocks that we always get in each and every year. All right, let's leave it at that. Economist Danushka Pathirana, thank you very much, appreciate it. A break now. This is the State of the Nation, back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Now, the Education Council report has officially cleared the Parliamentary Subcommittee. Professor O.G. Jayawardena handed it over to Deputy Minister Mahieash last week, and the process is finally moving. Now, why do we need a council if we already have educational reforms? Now, think of this way. The reforms are the engine, the new syllabus is the modern approach, and the council is the safety belt. Now, we all know the history here. Governments change and suddenly the education policy changes too. It leaves students and teachers stranded in the middle. Now, the council is designed to stop that drift. If it anchors the policy so it survives the next election cycle, regardless of who sits in the ministers or the presidents or the government's chair. Now, last week, the whole educational reforms conversation kind of died out, but it's still not all the way dead, as the government hopes to revive it next year, or possibly later this year as well. We will get some clarity from Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amrasuriya later on in the month with regard to what exactly the government is thinking on this. Now, are these reforms what Sri Lanka actually need right now, or is it a distraction from what kind of reforms we have to bring in and proceed to do something else? Also, will the Education Council help aid the continuity of the new reforms? And on top of that, will these reforms really generate the target Sri Lanka needs to achieve in education? Now, joining me is Professor Indika Karunathilake, who's the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. Now, about the Education Council, the government has put forward, is that helpful socially when educational reforms have kind of stalled?
Yes, Mike. I think I will answer the question in this way. First, by explaining why education is important, then we can get into the next question. There are several factors. One is the country, whatever achievement that the country has reached is firstly due to education, mainly due to free education. Through over generations, the knowledge, social status, and the capacity has developed over time. That's number one. Secondly, if the country want to move forward, make a quantum leap towards the next level, especially due to economic development, the most important factor is the human capacity building. If you take example from any country, maybe Singapore, maybe Japan, maybe Korea, those countries have reached high-level economic development through various means. But the common factor is development of the capacity of the human resources. That's number two. Number three, the knowledge is changing very rapidly, exponentially increasing. Nowadays, knowledge can be doubling within hours. In that context, the education should also change. The education should change according to the needs of the country, the context, the rate of knowledge expansion. Therefore, it's very important that the education reforms are happening on a regular basis. It has to be, what I believe is, continuous improvement. Continuous improvement, because education is something that's always changing. Therefore, I believe that to do that, you need a committee of experts. And I believe is, in that kind of committee, there need to be experts from different fields, but very specially educationists. Those are the most important people who can take the decision. So that is my answer to your question.
Indeed, Professor, I understand that the current education reforms are going to be costly, and there's no other way around it. As suggested by the opposition, should the government first rectify the shortcomings and then launch the reforms, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Education reforms are never going to be perfect, because it will be ongoing, continuous, never-ending improvement. So that means every time we are making improvements right throughout. So it's never going to be one of perfect thing. Nowhere in the world that is possible. Anyway, it's good to have a discussion and a dialogue and even a debate regarding education reforms, because education is important for everyone. However, it's got to be constructive dialogue and discussion. What I am concerned is, what should we be discussing? Ideally, our discussion starting point is, or when it comes to education reforms, the starting point or the first question we need to answer is, what kind of citizen we need for the country and for the world? What are the knowledge and skills and attitudes? And to develop that kind of citizen, what kind of competencies are required? For example, knowledge is required, teamwork, leadership, information technology nowadays, and even humanities qualities like empathy, attitudes, communication skills. What kind of citizen do we need? And to produce that kind of citizen, what kind of content should be given? And what are the levels that they should achieve at each level, school, university, so on and so forth. Then what kind of educational methods, then what kind of assessment methods, and what kind of material that should be produced or given to the student to achieve that level, and how this whole process should be managed. Now the debate is on the material. So we are actually discussing and taking from the wrong end. The debate should be on what kind of citizen we need. That's a starting point. That is my concern. Debate should be there, but finding out maybe errors or whatever, intentional, unintentional, whatever errors, that is the last point. What we need to discuss is actually what kind of human being we need and what should be our approach in achieving that.
Absolutely understood. All right, let's leave it at that. Professor Indika Karunathilake, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo. Appreciate it, sir. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the growing tourism numbers. This is the State of the Nation back here. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Now, Sri Lanka's tourism numbers, they're not limping anymore. They are sprinting. In 2025, we closed with 2.3 million tourist arrivals. That is a record year. In January of this year alone, we pulled in more than 200,000 arrivals. That is up from 9.7% from January of last year. And by early February, that is early this month, the running total for 2026 was already more than 350,000 arrivals. Now, India is leading the source market right now, with UK and Russia also in the mix. So yes, the world is noticing us again. Even Jaffna has been named among Lonely Planet's top 25 cities to visit this year. Honestly, do we actually have the facilities to handle this curve without the tourist experience turning into a stress test? By mid-2025, the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority registered accommodation showed around 4,638 establishments and 56,702 rooms. And the room distribution is still heavily concentrated in few districts like Colombo, Kandy, Galle, a little bit in Ampara, and certain amount in Jaffna. So if we are talking about a national tourism boom, the infrastructure has to be national too. Road access, clean public toilets, last mile transport that does not feel like a lottery, trained guides, connectivity, digital payments, and the list keeps going on and on. Now, regional competitors are not waiting for us to get our act together. They are competing against us. They're already packaging experiences, events, and nights like a factory line. So how far should we move if we want 3 million arrivals in 2026? We cannot plan our way into it slowly. Now we have to execute before the next peak cycle locks in travelers' habits, because if they have a habit of coming to Sri Lanka, that's actually a good trend. Now let's talk about money. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka shows tourism earnings about $3.2 billion in 2025. But here is the catch. Tourism earnings are not a perfect count of every dollar that physically enters Sri Lanka. CBSL notes tourist earnings are calculated using arrivals, average stay and average spending per day. And travel inflows data are tied to the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority survey approach. So the question is simple. How much actual dollars are coming into the country through tourism right now? Through banks and measurable spending, not just calculations. Let's hear what the government has to say. Joining me now is Deputy Minister of Tourism, Professor Ruwan Ranasinghe. Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. Now, Minister, with arrivals trending up, can our gateways keep up, like the Bandaranaike International Airport? Can it have the capacity it needs, flight slots, immigration lanes, baggage handling? And what kind of role is the Mattala Airport playing in this? What specific upgrades will be delivered this year?
Yes, in fact, Mahieash, the airport or the gate entering to the country has been a challenge for tourism for us. So we have, been working for so many years on this expansion project on Terminal 2, which we have initiated, and hopefully we can finish it by 2028. But in the meantime, as you said, to accommodate the surging arrival numbers, we have taken steps to do certain interim upgrades in the airport. For example, redesigning the existing counters, which are decades old. With that, we are looking at increasing the number of counters there. Also, I am thankful to the private sector operators in tourism industry, those who have come out with a temporary arrangement there with a marquee, and we have introduced 24 counters there as well. Further to that, there are other e-gates we have introduced at the airport, so that the efficiency will be increased. With all these things, we believe that we can manage until the second terminal is completed. And coming back to Mahieash, on the Mattala airport, actually we are looking at promoting and developing it as the cargo hub as well as charter flights for tourism. So that is the focus for Mattala. There are no specific upgrades or developments planning within 26 for Mattala airport, but we are looking at these two major areas like cargo and charters. The government has taken a policy decision to waive off the embarkation levy at Mattala for charter flights, to promote all these charter flights getting down there. Some of those Russian, Belarusian, charters were operated there, and in fact 2025 was recorded as the highest number of passenger handling at Mattala as well. So we will continue on that policy for Mattala airport.
Indeed, Deputy Minister, now what is the government's concrete plan for this year to increase luxury room stocks and attract higher spending tourists, not just the ones that are coming right now?
Our policy, I have instructed even the marketing team, promotion and marketing should be targeted at upmarket. So we are planning to increase the luxury room stock by 15 to 20% in the coming year. There are so many investments going on. Even this weekend, I'm going to open a luxury project. And yesterday we had some discussions with American groups. So we are looking at, promoting and attracting more investments through, expedite approval process as well as incentives for investors to invest on the luxury hotel rooms.
Indeed, understood. Minister, in 2026, will you publish the actual tourism foreign exchange inflows measured through the banking system, separate from formula-based estimates, which is published by the Tourism Development Authority and the Central Bank? The reason I'm asking is to figure out an actual earnings from tourism and whether we are getting the returns as expected.
Well, there is a debate going on, but generally in the whole region, in the world, the post-pandemic tourists has, reduced on the other activities and shopping, which can be seen globally. In terms of, the publishing data, we are following the United Nations World Tourism Organization's standard procedure on the estimates and, publishing data, but Central Bank and the SLTD has agreed, and the Tourism Ministry, to work on the actual figures in 2026 with the banking system, which we are trying to do and complete in 2026.
All right, understood. Hopefully the trend will continue. That was Professor Ruwan Ranasinghe, the Deputy Minister of Tourism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mahieash.
Time to take a short break. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Now taking a look at the state of our health. You know what is the scariest number in this country right now? 100. That is how many new cancer patients we are finding every single day here in this country. And Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Asanka admitted this when he was down at the National Hospital opening a new cancer detection center on the ground floor of the OPD. Now, he says the government have plans to put these centers in every district. Now, during this event, the Deputy Minister said something crucial. The numbers are going up and people are walking in when it is already too late. 40 people, that is how much that are dying every day from cancer. And listen to this statistic on breast cancer. 15 women diagnosed daily, and we lose 3 of them every single day. Those numbers are indeed alarming. Let's bring in Anuradha Wickramasinghe standing by at the data board. Thank you very much, Anuradha, for being here. Alarming numbers on this issue. What's the breakdown?
Yes, Mahieash, very alarming numbers indeed, not just because of the already existing totals, but also the exponential rate with which these numbers are rising daily, with the number of diagnoses and also mortalities that occur with each passing day, not just in breast cancer, but also in other cancer areas as well. Now, if you are able to direct the attention towards the data that we were able to compile for the most recent statistic estimates for cancer, as you can see, breast cancer is what takes the cake when it comes to the sheer number of cases reported, with 24.8%, followed very closely by oral and lip cavity, esophageal cancers, lung cancers and colorectal cancers. Now, the important thing to note is that while these statistical data will give us a different overview of the types of cancers, the base treatment for each of these cancers continues to be chemotherapy. So we did some research, we did some digging with governmental institutions as well as private hospitals to exactly understand the ballpark figures of which we can expect this kind of financial burden to be. And we found out that it was around 15,000 to 20,000 or 30,000 per 3 to 4 hour chemotherapy treatment, and of course upwards of 70,000 rupees for a full day chemotherapy treatment, and that is excluding more advanced technologies like laser and radiation, which go upwards of 2 lakhs to 16 lakhs at a cap, and more often than not 2 million is the threshold mark for a full recovery as expected with the diagnosis that has been given. So there's always a concern how exactly governmental institutions that provide this care for free is going to continue economically supporting these treatments while also seeing this exponential rise of cancer patients. So there is an important need to ensure proper prevention and screening occurs and early detection to make sure that there is no economic and financial strain not just on the people but also on the economy in order to prevent cancer from being the thing that kills not just the country's people but also the country's economy. Over to you, Mahieash.
Absolutely, those numbers are really scary, Anuradha. And I sincerely hope people educate themselves on this subject and get themselves tested if they are suspecting they could be in the line for this rather than figuring it out at the later stage. Anuradha Wickramasinghe at the data board tonight, thank you very much. So this is what the doctors are telling us to do. If you are between 30 and 40, get a clinical check every 3 years. Over 40, make it an annual appointment. Forget the politics for a second and just get checked. I want to understand as to why Sri Lanka is suddenly facing such an issue and why these numbers are rising alarmingly. Is it a lifestyle pattern issue or is it something else? Joining me now is Dr. Asanka Gamage, consultant oncologist and a cancer specialist. Thank you so much, doctor, for your time. Doctor, let's be honest, we blame genetics, but isn't the real killer on our dinner plate? We eat processed meat, we drown ourselves in sugar, and we fry everything. Doctor, in your opinion, what's causing this cancer spike?
Thank you, Mahieash, for joining me. In today's world, cancer has evolved from just a being disease into a global health burden. Not only in our country, but across the world, cancer incidence is rising remarkably, and it is predicted to rise in the future. If we look at the causative factor, the cancer is often multifactorial. In other words, we may not be able to give an exact reason for why our patient is developing cancer. But over the years, cancer research has found some risk factors which would increase the risk of cancer among individuals, such as aging population, unhealthy diet, obesity, physical inactivity, use of toxins like tobacco, alcohol, which considerably increase the risk in cancer. If we consider the diet, we know that using processed meat and excessive amount of red meat might increase the risk of bowel cancer. But the diet which is rich in antioxidants, vitamins like fresh fruits, vegetables and nuts is considerably reducing the risk of cancer. And it's important to note that by lifestyle modification, we can able to reduce the risk of cancer by about 25%.
Indeed, doctor, everyone knows about the lump in breast cancer. In order to check breast cancer possibilities, by the time we notice anything, it might be too late for more. So, to raise awareness, what do people ignore most and what should be the cause for concern for them?
Diagnosis of cancer at an early stage is the most important factor which determines its outcome. If you diagnose it early, there is a better chance of cure and you might need less aggressive treatment. For example, you might need a less advanced surgery, might not need advanced oncological treatment. So, when you find out symptoms, it is very important that you seek medical advice immediately. Maybe a lump on breast could be early signs, or else maybe change in breast architecture. Anything new change happening on your breast can be a symptom of breast cancer.
Understood. Doctor, now we Sri Lankans are really good at servicing our vehicles every certain number of miles religiously. But most Sri Lankans won't see a doctor unless they are bleeding or fainting. For the healthy who might be watching this, who think they are perfectly safe, should they get tested, or are there any indicators that in case you fall into those categories, perhaps it's better to get checked?
Yes, that's very important, Mahieash. We call it cancer screening. Screening aimed at diagnosing cancer at a very early stage even without having symptoms. For example, the screening mammogram, which is recommended for every female who are above 50 years till they become 70, which will diagnose breast cancer at a very early stage even without having a lump. So, it's recommended once in every 3 years, every female should have at least mammogram examination. Apart from that, the self-breast examination is recommended for each and every female, which would help us diagnosing at an early stage. We have a screening program for cervical carcinoma, which by pap smear or HPV DNA. So, it is recommended each above 35 years of sexually active female should have these testing done regularly. There are other screening programs as well, for example, colorectal cancer as well as low dose CT scan for smokers. So, if you are at risk, it's better to get checked before it's late. And if your family members having a cancer, so better do not wait till these age limits. You should start screening early in order to reduce the risk of your cancer.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was Dr. Asanka Gamage, consultant oncologist and a cancer specialist. Thank you very much. Now, for the love of Christ, just get checked. It'll save a lot of pain for you and for your family at large. Let's take a short break. This is the State of the Nation. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Now, taking a look at the state of our world, last week three elections took place in Asia, one in Japan and one in Thailand and also Bangladesh. Now, if you read the international headlines, you probably missed the most important story. In Japan, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi called the snap election. She was struggling, the house was deadlocked, so she rolled the dice. And she didn't win, she got a supermajority. In Thailand, the Bumjai Thai party, the deal makers, also swept the board and are forming the government. And in Bangladesh, the Bangladesh National Party, or the BNP, gained victory as well. Now, in the modern liberal playbook, neither of these parties should have won. Why? Because Takaichi from Japan is a hardline nationalist. They call her the Japanese Trump. She puts Japan first, second and third, fourth, fifth, every time Japan first. And then the Bumjai Thai party in Thailand, there are deep conservatives too. They are about land, not the brand. In Bangladesh, the BNP is a very hardline right-wing conservative party that has been linked to violence in many instances in that nation's history. But here's a statistic that should wake you up tonight. Who put them in power? It wasn't the old men in the village alone. It was the 18 to 22-year-olds. Yes, the demographic, we are told, is woke, liberal, and anti-establishment. In Japan alone, Prime Minister Takaichi polled nearly 90% with that voter bloc. 90%. Think about that. The TikTok generation is voting for the most conservative leader in Japan. Why? Why are these youth turning to leaders who want to close borders and build armies? Because they aren't blind. They see Donald Trump in the White House playing America first and bullying the world. They see wars in Europe, they see economies collapsing, and they have realized something very important. When the world gets nasty, you don't want a leader who is nice. You want a leader who is tough. They don't want to open their economy for the world to walk on. They want a bodyguard. So if there is a hidden lesson here, it is this. The youth haven't become evil. They have just become realist. They know that in 2026, survival matters more than feelings. Let's bring in the head of the Department of International Relations, University of Colombo, Dr. Pavithra Jayawardena, to the conversation. Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking the time to speak to me. Let's be honest about the narrative we've been fed. For many years, the experts told us that Gen Z only cares about social justice and climate change. I'm also at fault here. I used to say that as well. But looking at these results in the region, isn't it true that liberalism was just a luxury product, and the moment the economy crashed or some kind of instability pops up, the youth threw it in the trash can?
Thank you, Mahieash, for having me. You're exactly right, and now it's where we can see how Gen Z is actually behaving or making decisions, where we see that they choose choices based on issues. as opposed to based on values, which we have seen throughout many generations. So I agree that they prioritize economic anxiety, and it's not just in the region, it's not just in the country, it's globally the same trend. So they prioritize economic matters. They are fed up kind of by the economic anxiety, and they don't really buy some traditional narratives or solutions. So I think that kind of a mindset that kind of mindset drive them for their behavior, choices, voting patterns and all that.
Doctor, I'm very curious to learn this. What can a country like Sri Lanka learn from these trends within the region? Sri Lanka seems to be heavily betting with the Western fronts rather than pitching for the home region.
So when the rule-based order is declining, it's the main damage is for countries like us, who are known as the countries in the periphery, because we have been benefited by the rules-based order given our smallness in various sectors, in the market, economic capacity, security capacity, networking, leadership, all that. What Sri Lanka can learn, while we need to have our own national policies intact, but I think we should also take at least the normative leadership in the world for sort of mediating for more collective alliances, because there's no other way out if we want to have the liberal world order and more liberal and democratic nature in general. Countries and the world are interconnected like never before. We can, I think we should be there in the globe with our normative leadership aspect, while also diversifying our relations with various countries.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was the head of the Department of International Relations, University of Colombo, Dr. Pavithra Jayawardena. Thank you very much, appreciate it. A short break now, back with the closing. Well, tonight we spoke about reserves, education, tourism, health and the region. Different stories, one pattern. We're not short of plans in Sri Lanka, we are short of execution. So here is the message I want you to take with you. Stop asking who will save us. Start asking what will be delivered, by when and with what proof. Because slogans do not build reserves, promises do not fix schools, and speeches do not catch cancer early. Only systems do. Only discipline do. And only you and I can do it together. Well, with that, we wrap up this edition of State of the Nation. Thank you so much for watching. Send us your comments to feedback.aenglish@derana.lk. or WhatsApp your feedback on 076-805-7933. We'll be back again next week with views you can trust and, of course, opinions you cannot ignore. Thank you for watching tonight. See you there. Bye for now.
Until taste, one more shot. We'll call it a day, it's a blind spot.